preaching deceitful and deadly? And that's probably a whole new series in its own right there, but definitely want you guys to touch on that, if you will.
Who's going to start on that one?
So who's going to start?
Come on now, y'all. Don't be scared. Come on.
It's everyone. And by first saying that, I think that prosperity preaching is dead in the sense that it's promoting earthly prosperity and not in earthly treasures, which all things are going back to the dirt. We have to first realize, we have to be really slow to know that that could go into idolatry, you know, and that's a very big sin, because we're supposed to be building our treasures in things in heaven, and as long as we have everything spiritually situated, then only then can we begin to work on the earthly things, because the scripture tells us that if you seek the kingdom of heaven and his righteousness, then all these earthly things shall be added unto you. So if they're preaching about prosperity, they need to first be preaching in making it clear that we have to build our heavenly treasures first. Hello?
Okay. Yes, ma'am. You were breaking up a little bit, but I think we heard the gist of it.
Yes, and really, that was a question that I had for the board, with idolatry in itself. And before I move on to that, I just want to know if anyone had anything else to say about that.
As far as what, prosperity preaching?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think everybody probably wants to touch on that.
Well,
Evelyn, you want to go?
Say it again.
Go ahead, somebody jump in. We have about 13 minutes, so.
Okay, I'll jump in. Is it deadly? The answer is yes. It's deadly spiritually, and it's deadly in terms of people physically dying behind believing some of the things that have been taught from the word of faith / prosperity preachers and ministries. I know personally myself, and that's probably a whole nother show. But in terms of people dying spiritually or being affected spiritually, I've followed this prosperity preaching, word of faith teaching for at least 15 years, and it's really been around a lot longer than that, probably closer to 30 years. And what people do not understand about this teaching is that it is not Christian teaching. When I say it's not Christian teaching, it is not Christian. In the 2,000-plus year history of the church, there was no such teaching until within the last 30 to 35 to 40 years. So it's a new set of teaching on the scene. So the question has to be asked, well, where does it come from? Well, where it comes from new thought, positive confession, New Age movements, and also some elements of Eastern religions. Now, you tell people this, and they look at you with their eyes glazed over, but someone made the point earlier about history. It seems that Christians nowadays do not have an appreciation for the history of the church, Christian history, and I think that's just largely a byproduct of being in America. But I'll leave my comment there. But the origins of the teaching are not from Scripture, even though they use a lot of Scripture to supposedly back up what they say. But when you begin to actually examine what it is that they're teaching, they use a lot of Scriptures out of context routinely. The whole movement is based on taking Scriptures out of context. It's actually an art form within that movement. But I'll leave that there. Let somebody else jump in.
Okay, Evelyn, you're back. We saw that you got knocked off, but you are unmuted. Go ahead.
Yes. Okay, well, if she's not going to jump in, I'll speak real briefly on the prosperity aspect. I mean, the church clearly speaks about prosperity. From what I understand, they clearly speaks about prosperity on earth, and that working towards the thing of this world. And people spend hours, 8 hours, thinking about and gathering up stuff of this world, and won't spend 5 minutes and thinking about this prosperity as far as heaven, the treasures in heaven. Back, Devoneer was even talking about this falls back once again into idolatry. You know what I mean? Because we're so busy focusing on it. Matter of fact, I just left a church. I just dismembered myself from a church that basically all he was talking about was financial gain. Financial gain had a big vision, the wall of financial gain. And I'm like, man, please. I almost called him a nigger. I mean, really, it's like, what about the kingdom of heaven? Prosperity is a beautiful thing if you got your spiritual man all lined up and ready to bounce up out of this place. God wants to go in the rapture. You know what I mean? Tonight your soul may very well be required of you, my brother. But what have you built? What have you built? What have you built in heaven? Because tonight your soul may.
Okay. All right. What I want to do is I want to open it up for Evelyn to see if she wanted to comment on that, and then we'll open it up as far as our phone line.
Sure. I was just gonna add that the prosperity gospel is an idol. It is a false god, and as Ephesians 6 says, we're in a spiritual battle, and behind every physical idol, there's a spiritual principality, and the spirit behind this is Satan. And the Gospels and the New Testament writings talk about false Christs, false messiahs, and it talks about false gospels. And in Galatians 1, it talks about those who preach false gospels. They sound good, but they're actually not good news at all. And it says, let God's curse fall on anyone who preaches that. So it's a very serious thing when people, promote teachings like that, because they are setting up an idol before God's people and seducing them into idolatry. So it's not like the prosperity gospel is just a little off theologically, or it's kind of Christian doctrine, but it's a little off. It's totally demonic, just like Kevin said. Before I got saved, I used to be in the occult or the New Age movement. And
wow.
the teachings that come out of Creflo's mouth and Kenneth Copeland and these different preachers, it's the same stuff that's taught in the occult. They just put Christianized lingo on it. But the spirit behind it, it's the same spirit. I actually did a video on this, and I went to a Wiccan website. Wiccans are witches, the actual religion Wicca, witchcraft. And they teach about positive thinking and creative visualization and a lot of the stuff. They talk about words being packed with power, like spiritual containers, and as you release words, you can create your own reality. That stuff is taught in Wicca. So what on earth is this stuff doing coming out of the mouth of Joel Osteen or Creflo? It's because behind Creflo, behind these preachers, it's Satan himself, and he's just operating through them to get people to worship a false Christ. And if you follow a false Christ, it says in Matthew 7, you don't have a relationship with Christ. He's going to say, I don't know you. Depart from me.
Okay, great.
Very serious.
You can't talk about Brother Joel now. Brother Joel is so nice, and Brother Joel got a nice smile. You can't talk about Brother Joel. That's the we got between us. I'm sorry.
You guys, we have about 6 minutes, so I definitely want to hit on a couple more points, and then I want to also open it up for some of our listeners that are dialing in, and I do apologize. We're going to unmute area code 770-374. Welcome to the show. You're live. You have a question for the panel, or you want to answer any of the questions that we posed so far?
Well, yeah, just on this prosperity preaching, I, for one, do not believe in prosperity preaching for myself. However, I'm not going to go as far as saying that it's of the occult or demonstrative, whatever the issue of it is, because at the same time, the Lord has the power to come to us, to reach us in different areas in ways that only people can be reached. So to say that a particular pastor is teaching from the devil may not necessarily be true. That's for God to decide. Maybe that's the medium that God set up to reach these